Have you ever felt like you were stuck, asking yourself, how do I find clarity and purpose when everything around me feels overwhelming? And I'm not even sure where I'm going. Well, you're not alone. Whether you're running a business, raising kids, or trying to keep up with the demands of life, we all reach a point where we lose our sense of direction. But here's the thing, if you're ready to rediscover your passion, find your way back again, and reconnect with what truly matters to you, you've come to the right place. I'm your host, Yves Mukani, and you are listening to the Rising and Thriving podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to your go to place for self discovery, mindset shift, and practical strategies to help you live a more purpose driven life. Today, we are diving into a topic that, let's be honest, we've all faced at some point in our life, which is fear of failure. For young professionals in their 30s and 40s, this fear can feel especially heavy. I remember being at a point in my career where I made a lot of strides and it felt like I had it all figured out by then. But I still could not shake my fear of failure. Without me even noticing it from time to time, it crept in very quietly and made me second guess my decision, delay my progress, and sometime stop me from moving forward. We're going to explore why that happens and, more importantly, how you can break free from it. Fear of failure isn't something that you have to live with forever. There are proven ways to overcome it, and I'm going to walk you through three strategies that will help you move forward, even when fear is staring you in the face. I'll break today's episode into three key segments. The first segment will be the psychology of fear, which will be a research based exploration of how fear of failure affects our decision making. The second segment will be wisdom from the past, where we will take a philosophical perspective that offer a new way of thinking about fear. And the third segment will be how to go from fear to freedom. Here we'll talk about actionable strategies that will help you conquer this fear once and for all. So let's dive in. Let's start with the science behind why we fear failure in the first place. There's a really insightful research article titled Fear of Failure Causes and Consequences by Julie Norum, who's a professor of psychology at Wellesley College. In her research, Dr. Norum dived into the reason why people fear failure and how it impacts not only their decision making, but also their overall sense of well being. According to Dr. Norum, fear of failure is often a learned behavior. It's something many of us pick up as children or young adults when we begin to associate failure with negative consequences, such as disappointing our parents, being ridiculed by our peers, or being punished for mistakes. Over time, our brain internalizes these fears as a way to protect us from emotional pain. Failure then becomes more than just an event. It becomes a threat to our self worth and identity. Now, here's the thing, fear of failure isn't always a bad thing. In fact, it serves an important purpose. It's a survival mechanism designed to keep us safe from potential harm. But, and this is crucial, it often goes into overdrive. Dr. Norham's research shows that when we experience fear of failure, our brain activates what's known as the fight or flight response. This response is designed to protect us from physical danger. But in modern life, it tends to kick in during non life threatening situations like a job interview, a presentation, or launching a new business. When that fight or flight response is triggered, we can experience things like increased heart rate, sweaty palms, and most importantly, for today's discussion, paralysis. Our brain, in its effort to protect us, says, if you don't try, you can't fail. So we avoid risks. We overthink, procrastinate, or aim for perfection as a way to delay the possibility of failure. But here's the kicker: this avoidance behavior, while it feels safe in the short term, is actually preventing you from reaching your full potential in the long run. It stops you from taking action, trying new things, and stepping out of your comfort zone. And ultimately, it's not the failure itself that holds you back, it's the fear of failure. Dr. Norm's research also highlight the fact that people who fear failure often fall into what's called failure avoidance cycle. It means that the more you avoid failure, the less you grow. And the less you grow, the more you fear failure. It's a vicious cycle that keeps you stuck in place. So, what do we do about it? Well, understanding that fear is a natural learned response is the first step. The next step is taking deliberate action to break that cycle, which we'll get into in just a bit. Now, let's take a step back from the scientific approach and dive into something a bit more philosophical. One of my favorite quotes on fear comes from Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, "Do the things you fear, and the death of fear is certain." I love this quote because it gets right to the heart of what fear really is. Fear isn't something that goes away on its own. You can't outthink it or wait for it to disappear. You have to face it head on. And the moment you do, the moment you take action despite your fear, it starts to lose its grip on you. Think about it. How many times have you been scared to do something, but once you finally did it, you realize that it wasn't as bad as you'd imagined? That's what Emerson is talking about. When you do the thing you fear, you realize that the fear itself was often worse than the actual event. Now, Emerson's quote also speaks to something deeper. It's a reminder that fear is temporary. It's only as powerful as you allow it to be. The more you run from fear, the bigger it grows into your mind. But when you confront it, it starts to shrink. And eventually, the death of fear becomes inevitable because fear can't survive where there's action. This philosophical approach aligns with modern psychology too. Study shows that exposure therapy, which involves gradually exposing yourself to things you fear, can significantly reduce the fear over time. The more you face your fears, the more desensitized you become to them. So, what does it mean for fear of failure? It means you have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. The more you take risks, the more resilient you become. And over time, that fear of failure becomes just another challenge to overcome rather than a wall that blocks your path. All right, now that we've explored both the psychological and philosophical perspective on fear, it's time to get practical. How do you actually conquer fear of failure in your daily life? Here are three strategies that have been proven to work. One, reframe failure as a feedback. Instead of seeing failure as a personal shortcoming, start viewing it as a feedback. Failure in itself is simply information, nothing more, nothing less. It's a signal that something didn't go as planned, but it doesn't mean that you're incapable or unworthy. Think about how athletes approach failure. When a basketball player misses a shot, they don't internalize it as, "I'm a terrible player." Instead, they look at their techniques, adjust, and try again. They use that failure as a feedback to improve their next attempt. So the next time you experience fear, take a step back and ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Write down three specific lessons that failure taught you. This simple shift in perspective turns failure from something to fear into something that fuels your growth. Second strategy, break your goals into smaller, manageable steps. One of the biggest reasons we fear failure is because the goal feels too big and overwhelming. When you're staring at a massive goal, whether it's starting a business, changing career, or even writing a book, the possibility of failure seems enormous. The solution? Break that big goal down into smaller, bite sized steps. By doing this, you lower the stakes. Each small step feels manageable, and even if you fail at one step, it's not the end of the world. Action tip for you: take a goal that's been scaring you and break it down into 5 smaller, actionable tasks. Focus on completing one step at a time. This approach reduces anxiety of failure because you're not risking everything at once. You're just taking manageable steps forward. And finally, the third strategy: practice self compassion. We need to talk about self compassion. Fear of failure often comes from a place of self judgment. We fear that if we fail, it means something negative about who we are. But here's the truth: failure is part of life, it's part of growth. And just because you fail at something doesn't mean you are a failure. By practicing self compassion, you give yourself the grace to fail without judgment. It means treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you will offer a close friend who's struggling. Another action tip for you: the next time you feel the fear of failure creeping in, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself, what would I say to a friend who is in this situation? Then offer yourself that same kindness. Remind yourself that it's okay to fail and it's okay to try again. Now, let's bring it all together. So, today we started by understanding fear through the lens of psychology, learning how our brain tries to protect ourselves by freezing us in place. Then we looked at Emerson's powerful reminder that we conquer fear by doing the very thing that scares us. And finally, I gave you 3 actionable strategies. The first one was to reframe failure as feedback. Second, to break your goal into smaller steps. And third, to treat yourself with more compassion. If you only take one thing away from this episode, let it be this: fear of failure is not the enemy. It's a sign that you are stepping out of your comfort zone and aiming for something bigger. It's your brain's way of alerting you that you are about to grow. And growth always involves risk. But it also brings incredible reward. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did. I really want to know though, what did you learn? What stuck with you? I love hearing from all of you, whether you're a current listener, a past client, or someone just finding the show. And while you're at it, do me a favor. If you're listening from your favorite podcast app, hit that subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, and throw in a 5-star rating. It really helps us grow and reach more people like yourself. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment below. Your support goes a long way. When you leave a review, you're helping us spread this message and change the world one person at a time. It makes a huge difference. So thank you so much for being here, for your support, and for helping us rise together. Until next time, my friends, keep rising and thriving.